So hello everyone. So we are going to see class and object in Java in this video. So let's move to the presentation first. Uh, Give me a second. So what is class and object? Class is generally we can say that it's a basically a entity or a data type or a particular object. Let's see if we initialize a variable. Uh, let's talk about a variable. If we initialize a variable with int a equal to 10, a is the name of that variable and int is the data type of that variable. So that's how class works. Here's int is a class. If we create a class, in that case that int will work as a class here. Or a class can be any entity in the real world. It's basically not a real world object, but it can treat as a real world object. Let's if I give you an example that animal, can we have a single animal in the animal section, in the animal category. So maybe you are thinking we have lots of animal in jungle, so we have to categorize every each of animal and put that one in that category. So animal category include every animal in that category. So animal is a big category, so we can create a class of that animal. We cannot create a instance or a particular entity that represents an animal, surely, because if we create an animal like a real world entity, like a dog is an animal, giraffe is an animal, everything, uh, lion is an animal, so we have to classify them in class. Let's create a class of animal. If a dog inherit that class of animal, so it means a dog have the attributes, all the attributes of animal, like animal, like type of animals can be carnivores, herbivores, omnivores. So basically a dog is always be one of this type. So that's how we that's how we inherit a class and get the properties. That's a common in own animals. That's how we classify entities in classes. If I have a class of animals and some other classes of giraffe, dogs and cats are inherit that class, so they surely have that property of that animal, because every dog, animal, giraffe belongs to the category of animal. So they surely have the property of type, eating type, like carnivores, omnivores, and the other type. Number of legs, there are different number of legs in different animals. Like giraffe has four, most of the animals has four. But we can say, if I have a bird class and ostrich is a bird in that, in another class, and it will inherit the class of bird. And so they, in that case, they have only two legs. So there are different type of legs in for different animals. So there are certain things that are fixed in an animal category, like legs, eating type, weight, height, and reproduction system, like laying eggs or give birth to young ones, different sorts of things. So all these things comes under animal class, and whoever other class will inherit that class, like tiger, lion, something like that. It always has that property. We just has to initialize that property with the help of our code. So that's the a brief idea of class and object. But let's see in the code section for a better understanding. Let's move to the other slide first. So class is not a real world thing, but it's a template of blueprint. That's how I'm saying. uh, Animals class have certain things, types, eating types, number of legs, but not the value. Whenever we are going to create an object of that class, then only it can hold some values. Okay, so unless it before, it's always a blueprint or template, like we using template for email, using Gmail, already already inbuilt templates. That's how class works. The class gives us already built in attributes. that another class can have, another object can have. That's how class give us that's attributes. So class does not occupy memory unless or until we create a object of that class. It's not going to occupy any memory. The class gives a group of variables of different data type group. So class can contain different sorts of things like methods, data type, instance member, static method, static member, different sorts of things can a class can contain. That's I already put that in the last line, like constructor, nested class, interface, method. Constructor is basically let's talk about later videos. Let's move from here first. Example that I already told you the example, like let's take it in the example. Example of class name is student, bird, vehicle, company. Any blueprint that can somebody can use is a class. So class employee that now you can see the int id, string name, two variables are there inside the class. That two variable are always inside that another class that inherit that class employee. So they always have the two variables like id and name. So because that another class who going to inherit that employee class, it will inherit all their blueprint, like it will use the blueprint of that class. In this class we have a blueprint of two variables, that is these variables are going to be in another class that going to inherit this class. So it gives a blueprint. So whoever use this blueprint with that surely have to fill the two variables or have the access of these two variables inside the class. After that main method, Java code runs from the main method. So we can create an object of a class like this. That's the syntax. Class name, we can say type name, but here is class name. Variable name like int a, so int a, so a is a variable name, so s1 is a variable name, and new keyword is to initialize the object of a class. Now employee s1 is a reference and new employee is a object, but in a complete we can call it that object of an employee. So that's how we can create the object of a particular class. And after that, if I print s1 id and s1 name, it will give us the default value, like in int case it's 0 and in string case it's null. Let's move to the other slide. So component of class, different components of class are put inside a class. Let's first of all modifiers. We will have a video on modifier for a better understanding. And class name, interface similar to class but not that exactly a class. And class keyword, simple a class keyword, we have to use a class keyword to create a class that we already seen in the previous slide. And body of the class like definition and variable like int id, int name. And after that parent class, superclass, is that a class we are inheriting in our class that we are writing right now. So and constructor and modifier we will see in another video. For now let's just use constructor. We use constructor to initialize our instance members. Instance members are, like I already told you, that id and name is an instance member of a class, that employee that I already shown you. Let's move to the next one and one more example. Here is we have created a class of student and give the two instance member, three instance members, name, class number, age. So here we are using constructor always start with the name of its class name. So that's how that's public student is the constructor here. But we will see this video regarding modifier constructor for a better understanding. Let's assume that it's going to initialize the instance member like class number, age and name of a particular object. So let's see, the below are the methods. Format of methods are first of all a modifier, after that return type, the string is the return type here, and the name of method. So get name is the name of method and it will return the name of that object that we are using in that case at that time. And the other method is get class number, put a particular object, and after that a get age. Let's move. So in the main method we can see that we are creating a object of a student. that called Vikram. First syntax of creating a class object of a class. So student is type and Vikram is a object of student class, and we are giving this value like Vikram, name of the student, and age of the student, class of the student, class number, and we are printing that too in in this case. Let's imagine here we created a class of student, and after that we created an object of that class. Oh, student class is it's only a blueprint. when we are when we create an object of that class, like I am saying Vikram is the object of class student. So Vikram is going to represent a particular student, not a whole class, like whole class bunch of 50 students in a class, like not representing the whole class. It's going to represent a only a single student, not the total student of that school or university, something like that. So it has its own identity, its own name, its own age, its own class, its own full name, something like that. If we create that in our class, we were so so basically a class is a blueprint. When we created an object of that class, it will represent an entity in real world. Now Vikram is representing a real world student that have some name, age, and some class. So we can get Vikram name by getName function that I already showed you in the previous slide, and that function is going to return the class of a particular going to return the name of particular student and class number and get age. So first I want to show that, give me a second. Yes, so first of all I want to show if we pass values in constructor like name, class number, age, it is going to initialize this value for a particular object. So when we creating object like Vikram, that why I'm saying you talking about earlier. So Vikram already have this kind of blocks in there. We can see that Vikram can store this sort of values like a blueprint of blocks of value like name, class number, and age for himself. When we initialize that object with that values, it's going to enter in the Vikram blocks of attributes like in which we have number and name and class number for particular Vikram. So after we initialize pass that value in a where when we creating object, so it will come going to through and initialize our Vikram instance members, and Vikram going to hold that values for himself, like that his age, like his class number and his age. And we can get the value of a particular object by using getName. If we return name, it's going to return the name of a particular object who that object was calling this function. If some other object going to call this function, then it will return the name of that object, like a Rahul. It means so it will return a Rahul. If we are Rahul object of Rahul, it's calling this function, so it will return that name. So every object has its own type of blocks of instance variables in which they can store their values. So it will work as a particular entity, different entity from one another. So that's the slides, and let's move to the code part, a bit of code to explain better. Let's create our project first. So main class, that first we create a class that I already told you, animal for better understanding. Let's create student. We already seen student for a bit, so let's take student and have some variables like int name. So it's not int name, string name, and let's age only. We are taking only two variables here. So let's take constructor We can create constructor using same name of class. Now you can constructor to use constructor to initialize a particular object instance members. Let if we pass the constructor here, we have to give return type of that variable that's going to come here, like that. What we have to call is like formal parameters, that what we are called this. And actual parameters are that parameter that we are going to pass when we are calling this constructor. So string name and int age. So this keyword represent the name of the object who calling this constructor, and the other name is the name coming from the constructor. Like this name is representing that name and this name representing that name. Let's take age and age. So that's our simple class, and let's create methods to get like name and age of for a particular student. So return type of method, name of method, get name, return. So for now let's use this. That's enough to understand. Let's move to the code part. So let's move to the main function part. So what I'm trying to say earlier in ppt type, if we create object of student, you can see for constructor and modify my another video regarding that. I will upload upcoming days. So let's initialize here with some values for Vikram. So name of Vikram is, let's put Vikram Chauhan something. Vikram MC, that's the full name of Vikram, and age is 22. We pass values to our constructor, and this object will call its constructor that are here, and it will initialize values for name and age for Vikram, for particularly Vikram. And if we create another, that's the common name, and put something like that. So that's the full name of Rahul. Rahul is full name and age is 23. So every object will contain its own instance member like name and age for himself or herself, whatever is that. So Vikram surely have their name and age block inside Vikram object, and it can store their values in that too, using constructor, using functions, the method and all. Let's take the output of that thing now. So here is age of Vikram. Let's see Rahul name here. So that's enough to understand that object will contain its own instance member for each object. Uh, a class will contain its own instance member for its single each object. Like it's a single object Vikram Rahul, and the one you can create like Sam something. So it always have their own unique name and age blocks in which they can store their values using constructor or functions too. Let's pin that code now. Run that code now. So it's going to say we need to create that in a particular file. So that move this code to the other file. So now it will run properly. So here our output is here. So Vikram ABC and Vikram age 22 and Rahul name is Rahul. So we can see here that every object has its own unique instance members. So when we create a object of a particular class, it will represent a real world entity. So object blueprint, this object is using blueprint student, and it will have, because of that it will have two members inside this, name and age. And so Vikram has name and age because of the blueprint class student. So Vikram can have two values now, that name and age. So that's how class and object works. And let's meet in another video. That's it for this video.